Brexit. Say Brexit again.
Brexit means Brexit.
The lies.
The £350 million a week we send to the EU, which we will no longer send to the EU. Can you guarantee that's going to go to the NHS?
No, I can't.
The law.
The principle of consent is absolute and is throughout the agreement.
Brexit was meant to be done by the 29th of March, but now it turns out it's going to go on, and on, and on. Whatever side of the political spectrum you're on, you're probably not going to be very happy with the way in which this entire Brexit situation has played out. This is the story of what went wrong, and more importantly, how we could fix it. Consider subscribing by the end of the video. To start our story, we must go back to 2016.
We are approaching one of the biggest decisions this country will face in our lifetimes, whether to remain in a reformed European Union or to leave. The choice goes to the heart of the kind of country we want to be and the future that we want for our children.
The Cameron government chose to support remaining in the EU, but David Cameron and his government had years of austerity and failed foreign interventions behind them. Foreign interventions that led to a European-wide migration crisis. Austerity caused by a banking crisis and used as an excuse to cut public services. The opposition benches were fighting amongst themselves over their leader's ability to win an election. The SNP were chomping at the bit to make Scotland independent. Greece was being forcibly led into austerity by the EU to protect the Eurozone economy. Meanwhile, both the Remain and Leave campaign were making up lies, bending truth, just to win. The referendum was used by the political elite to empower themselves into what they believed to be the correct way.
And if we vote leave and take back control, I believe that this Thursday can be our country's Independence Day.
But the battle for empowerment naturally divided the nation. On one side, the belief democracy and power to the people should rule the country, while on the other, the belief that sensible economics should be the guiding force. Britain was broken and change was needed. The referendum was an opportunity for England and Wales, as well as other Leave voters, to say to the establishment that we're fed up and we want you to listen. An opportunity that wasn't available in elections because the main parties were not worth voting for. So inevitably, Britain voted to leave the EU.
The British people have voted to leave the European Union, and their will must be respected. I want to thank everyone who took part in the campaign on my side of the argument, including all those who put aside party differences to speak in what they believed was the national interest. And let me congratulate all those who took part in the Leave campaign for the spirited and passionate case that they made. The will of the British people is an instruction that must be delivered. It was not a decision that was taken lightly, not least because so many things were said by so many different organisations about the significance of this decision. So there can be no doubt about the result.
David Cameron resigned. So drunk with the newly gained power, the Leave campaign went on towards a leadership election, only to stab each other in the back. Labour did the same, and we ended up with the two main party leaders in their position by default.
Brexit means Brexit. The campaign was fought, the vote was held, turnout was high, and the public gave their verdict. There must be no attempts to remain inside the EU, no attempts to rejoin it through the back door, and no second referendum. The country voted to leave the European Union, and it is the duty of the government and parliament to make sure we do just that. There should be no general election until 2020. There should be a normal autumn statement held in the normal way at the normal time, and no emergency budget. And there should be no decision to invoke Article 50 until the British negotiating strategy is agreed and clear.
There wasn't anybody else available at the time with enough popularity and Bostle to replace them. This country is led by weak, unpopular leaders on all sides of the political spectrum. But then came a major constitutional crisis. The majority of the country had voted to leave the EU, expecting it to be done, but there was no plan on how to do it. Theresa May took months just to write a letter to the EU asking to trigger Article 50. The only thing that happened in that time was the dispute on whether the Prime Minister alone could trigger Article 50.
Only Parliament can grant rights to the British people, and only Parliament can take them away.
Gina Millers ruled that Parliament alone had sovereignty over triggering Article 50, the same Parliament who voted to go to war in Syria and Iraq that led to refugees and terrorists. The same Parliament, many of whom voted to cut public service spending, yet at the same time claiming expenses for themselves. The same Parliament who, between the two main parties, have continually failed to reduce net migration. One of the reasons why many people voted for Brexit, and we trusted them to make a sensible decision on Article 50. But not only that, we trusted them more to vote on the final deal. We don't have a written constitution, which means we messed up the legal autonomy of our Prime Minister. But Theresa May failed to understand that when things go wrong, honesty and communication are the best methods. We heard the soundbites.
No deal is better than a bad deal.
We had the resignations. We had all kinds of broken promises. Ultimately, despite attempts, we were promised a negotiation, and these weren't negotiations at all. The EU dictated the procedure to negotiate the divorce settlement and then the withdrawal agreement itself, and then future trade, which meant that the UK was on the back foot, having to support paying for a way out that we didn't know the outcome of. But most of all of us, the public and the politicians, failed to understand, notice and remember the EU and UK laws that make up the Brexit process, and they all stopped us getting what we wanted. The Good Friday Agreement, the Fixed Terms Parliaments Act, the No Confidence Procedure, the process the political parties undertake to make policies, the parliamentary voting procedure, the Article 50 deadline, the extension procedure, World Trade Organization rules, and the 4 freedoms of the EU, none of which work for Brexit because they are all fixed in stone laws that means the UK cannot benefit from leaving the EU, nor can it effectively and quickly make a decision on what to do and which path to choose. We either have a hard border on the island of Ireland, or we have it in the Irish Sea, or we remain in an existing EU treaty, such as the Customs Union or Single Market. Or we could simply just stay making these decisions for years and years to come. Brexit is a legal headache, but Theresa May didn't help the situation politically when she delivered the hammer blow of calling for a general election.
Our opponents believe, because the government's majority is so small, that our resolve will weaken and that they can force us to change course. They are wrong. They underestimate our determination to get the job done.
Ultimately, she lost the support of her party, relied on the DUP to prop up her government, and that meant whatever deal she came up with was a duff saleswoman selling a duff product. What's worse is that the transition period means if a deal is agreed, the UK could be facing years and years of this kind of politics. Politics that paralyses the government from helping other areas of the country. Many people voted Leave to take back control of the country, but when the government loses control of so much, it's only going to make people seriously angry. MPs rejected May's deal again and again. They rejected no deal. They chose to extend Article 50. So Theresa May hopes she can now get her deal passed on a 3rd or 4th vote. If it gets rejected, we might be negotiating a new deal for years to come. I can explain what's wrong by demonstrating in 3 words. I voted Leave. Now I've said that, half of you will switch off and stop listening to my opinion, and some of you will go as far as disliking the video and commenting below on how my decision to vote in favour of Brexit was an ill thought out, dumb thing to do that's led to the collapse of British politics. The other half will be wondering whether I'm going to blame Brexiteers or blame Remainers. But I'm not going to do either of that, because you're not here to listen to the opinions of those who you don't agree with. You're here to listen to something you do agree with, and that's the problem. To get out of this Brexit mess is going to take a compromise. A compromise means listening to the other side of the argument and agreeing with some of it. No deal would leave industries without the ability to import goods cheaply and lead to a rise in the cost of living. A second referendum would create major political uncertainty and division. Theresa Mays Deal gives up a lot of sovereignty, especially if the backstop is applied. In fact, any deal softer means accepting EU laws but not having a say in them, and any deal harder means potentially creating a border between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK or Ireland. Leaving on all terms would be worse off for the economy, but remaining? After all this? Sitting on the same benches as other EU nations who didn't help us with the most politically divisive democratic vote this country has ever seen, and then voting for EU budgets and motions that aid other EU countries and don't benefit the UK? Would we and could we even do that again? Who's the arrogant party here? Is it the EU for not giving in to the UK's demand? Or the UK for assuming that EU treaties would be more flexible? And why aren't our politicians more brave to challenge and amend such laws? We're stuck in an endless loop of procedure that paralyses us into doing nothing. We need a decisive leader. I'm sick and tired of politicians fighting amongst themselves. Pick a decision and stick to it. But please, don't prolong this painful agony. But do you agree with me? Join in the debate below and subscribe.